All right, let's get started, you guys. I want to thank you both for joining us. This time we're going to do things a little differently. Usually I moderate the presentations, but we have a guest interviewer today, one of our awesome kick butt volunteers, Mandy Pope. So thank you so much for joining us, Mandy.
Absolutely. Thanks for
And
having me.
Zachary, usually we get this super long bio that we get to post about all of our presenters, but you and I put this together kind of fast, so I didn't get a chance to post all of your awesome achievements. You want to kind of give me a rundown on what you do, who you are, where you've been, and how
Yeah,
we came
sure,
to get connected?
for sure. And this is, definitely it's not about me, so I really don't mind if we have it or not. But I'm Zachary Devon, so depends on the day. I do different things, but one of the things that I really pride myself in doing is career coaching for a lot of entertainers through our marketing and brand management company. And we touched a lot of lives and a lot of people. I'm a mental health warrior myself, so I have a story to tell, but including a lot of my clients that I work with. As artistic souls, a lot of people deal with mental health and they don't understand how to deal with it. So I'm here to advocate for that, to kind of talk through it and raise awareness.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. All right. Well, I will let you guys have at it.
Zach, what we're kind of talking about today is the social media marketing and entertainment and as a mental health coping mechanism. Obviously, you work with a lot of artists and entertainers. How do you see that they're using their talent, so their art, as a form of coping?
Well, I think it's self-expression and to be able to tell a story without judgment. And we've seen this in a lot of art throughout, the decades. As you listen to music, you always hear about the artist and the tortured soul. So, a lot of these people are telling their story and sometimes even asking for help in their visuals and their music. And people are like, oh, that's neat, but they're not really looking deep into it. So I think being able to have an outlet, on a creative level helps us, keep that from building up and overflowing, and turning into something that, could be toxic to us. So I value that myself because, I'm an artist myself as well. So when I go through things, talking about it to, putting it to music and writing about it, it's kind of a way for me to self-cope and heal.
So for me, for example, I'm not an artist by any means. I tried music once and I played the clarinet and I was done with it. So I haven't really found something that works for me as far as from an art standpoint. How would you recommend me going about finding that for me?
I think, when I say art too, obviously I work with artists, but there's people that, just want a creative outlet. So let's just call, being a creator. It's something that makes you happy and it's therapeutic. So, cooking is a form of art as well. A lot of people like to cook and they don't view it, as something that they can use to cope, with the issues that they're dealing with, because it's almost like a way to escape the harsh realities and kind of build a safe haven for yourself. So I think trying different things, and then even reflecting back to the times when, we were young, like, what did you enjoy? Going back to that and be like, that was the feeling that made me content, and then, re-exploring those. So especially right now with everything going on with COVID-19 and we're at home and, we're faced to deal with our issues, either alone or in a confined area with only a few people. It's time for us to start this self-exploration process. And I mean, even though I have a lot of creative outlets, I've learned a lot of things about myself, having to be stuck with my own thoughts and, figuring out, hey, well, if I don't have this, what else can make me happy? And, so it's a serious conversation we have to have with ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. Well, okay, I guess before that, mental health has a stigma. Let's call it what it is. It's unfortunate, but how do you deal with someone who maybe doesn't know that they have an issue, but you see an issue? How do you approach that?
Well, I asked, just really like surface level questions, about their stress levels, sleep patterns, and stuff like that, because it affects, you at least just on the surface, from there. And just how they function and productivity as things change, because I think people are afraid to talk about it because they don't want to be labeled as, somebody that is, mentally unstable and not able to function in society. And then also sharing my story with them as well, I think is important, because we don't see people with mental illness as being functional society, like people in society that are functional that can contribute. We just view them as, like the crazy veteran that, has like episodes, or, like people that are very closed off and don't talk to people. And that's not always the case. Everybody wears a mask that deals with that because of the stigmas out there. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, have you found that someone who, one of your clients that is in the spotlight, obviously I know everyone goes through their own journey and they talk about it when they're ready to, but or have you found that they're more or less likely to post about it and talk about it and get all that out?
if you asked me this 10 years ago, I'd probably say people would probably try to hide it a little bit more. I know we complain about social media that, people overshare and, they do too much. And, I agree on a small level, but it also has created an outlet for people to be able to express themselves online. I wouldn't say free of judgment, but it gives them a whole lot more comfort to be able to open up to people because they don't have to physically be somewhere. So it's almost, they feel like it's a safety net. So people are able to use that as a tool to kind of like, hey, this is the face of mental health and mental well-being, and like this is what I'm going through. So I think the internet is a great tool if you use it right.
Yeah. Do you think that, it also has something to do with like the generation too? They grew up with having a phone in their hand and being on the social media platform, expressing themselves that way. They are more exposed to it than someone, elder millennial. Do you think that has a play on it?
Yeah, it does, because a lot of people, they're stuck in their ways and they feel like if you overshare, it's harmful. And some of those people, unfortunately, I think you have to deal with it in a different aspect, if they don't gravitate to utilizing social platforms to voice that. So because when you've been growing up in a traditional format, and the next person that you call, you have to remember their phone number, you have to pull out a pager, like it's a disconnect to have to be on the screen. I dealt with that a little bit myself when I first started getting into entertainment, because I felt it was really intrusive. And, I didn't want to share a lot until, I just, one day I'm like, you know what, I'm going to have to change with the times or I'm going to get left behind. So as I looked into it, I felt, like it was kind of mixed. I had mixed feelings about it at first, because I was like, there's benefits and then there's intrusion of privacy, but I chose to, join the groups in the communities that were more positive and, avoid all the negativity out there. So if you look for the right people and for the right support group and the right avenues, then, I think it's a valuable tool, but we can't really force it on people. They just kind of have to make that decision for themselves.
Yeah. Well, one of the major things that, we kind of touched on it is mental health has the stigma. And I think you said it best, because, people just see it as people reacting and not really, when you have diabetes, you go to the doctor, they run a test, and then you get medicine. With mental illness, it's a little bit different. There's not just some blood test you can go take, unfortunately. How do we change that narrative, especially on the social media platform, in doing it that way?
Yeah, so I think it starts with media and, showcasing what, a mental health patient looks like. And, because in our minds, we just, like I was saying, we just imagine somebody that is just unstable and it's recognizable, which it isn't always. And I think a lot of the documentaries and stuff out there right now that are being put on Netflix, Hulu, and all the streaming platforms, do it very good service because we were talking about yesterday about the Aaron Hernandez case, and from the outside surface, we were just like, okay, well, this guy is just, a criminal. Like, he's got he's just not fit for society, and he was lying about it, and that was just a face. But then when they dug deep into it, they found like physical attributes from, years of concussion and how the brain changed. So I think those things are really shedding light on this being a physical ailment as well, and not just, the whole mind over matter thing. So.
Well, so why do you think that, or do you think that the studies in terms of how mental illness works, do you think we're just behind on the times because of that stigma that has happened over the years? You hear about these advances in medicine. Does that have anything to do with it, you think?
Yeah, so I actually have a friend that's a psych major, and we actually had a discussion a few days ago, and I think like psychology medicine is behind because it's more thought of, as just the manifestation of thoughts and not like physical imbalances and chemicals and stuff like that. So that has stalled a lot of the progress and funding, even because they don't feel like it's as severe as something else that is more immediate, like cancer. But it is still toxic, to the mind, and it does alter things on a molecular level. They're finding out. So because it's like you were saying yesterday about certain neurons not firing off appropriately and chemical imbalances with serotonin levels. So it is important for us to dig deeper to see what the physical attributes are of that and how it affects people, because you can't really just see that on the surface.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely waiting for those advances for sure. I'm intrigued to see what they're coming up with. I definitely think with people getting out there and speaking about mental health and not being ashamed of it,
Right.
I think that'll change the narrative, but it's going to take a while. I definitely think it's made strides.
Yeah.
But because of that, now people aren't afraid to engage with mental health and coming up with some sort of, medical advances or something like that. So I definitely think there's a positive outlook for mental health. But, we still got to push because it's not
Yeah,
there.
I mean, we're still way behind, and I feel we were talking about earlier that being, a veteran myself, and then being a male, and raised in a household where we weren't really pushed to show emotions and talk about our feelings and stuff, it really did stunt my understanding of, how like severe, something like this can affect your life and how you function. So as we kind of peel back the layers like an onion and look at this as a physical issue as well, I think more guys are going to step up and start talking about it.
Yeah. Well, what would you say to a guy that's listening right now? How would you, maybe he's struggling with something. What would you tell him for advice on what to do if he had the same kind of household that you were in?
Yeah, I mean, definitely don't jump into it, and I think you have to take baby steps in opening up to people. So if it's somebody that you've been close with for a while that doesn't judge you, maybe have some conversations about, hey, I think I'm, dealing with this, like it's affecting my, like daily life and whatever patterns that they're seeing, before even talking to a medical professional, because it takes that first step to, admit that you might have a problem and you want to look into it, and then having somebody that isn't going to judge you to kind of understand you. And then, and then after that, then I think taking those steps, then you can start seeking, professional help and talking to your doctors. But from like a guy's perspective, most guys don't like to go to the doctors. They don't want to talk about too many things, especially when they feel, like there's a stigma behind it. So having a support structure, I think beforehand would be probably, the best solution that I would probably recommend.
Yeah. Okay. And I know one thing too, and I know it's harder. I think it's just hard in general for the high school, junior high. You have to be mindful And, you know, going through this whole mental health thing, you hear that term over and over again. But it makes a huge difference, because if you're not in the moment and feeling what you're feeling, you're not going to know when something hurts you. You know, you're
Right.
not going to know. I think the first step is figuring out who you are and knowing your personality. And then when you start to see something's going wrong, then you know, hey, we need to adjust it. And I think that's really hard for people in general. I know it was for me. I had to start all over and redefine myself, because I had lost myself between high school and influences and trying to be the cool kid. And, you know, it's hard to do that. So
Yeah.
I think that's something, again, you can use the social media, like you said, as an outlet for people who aren't sure.
Right. Yeah. Shared experiences really help, you know, because I think we don't want to talk about it, especially like you were saying with like teenagers and stuff, because I dealt with a lot, you know, with identity crisis and, you know, a whole bunch of stuff back in the 90s growing up. And I didn't talk about it because I thought it was, you know, something that was like normal for kids to go through. And, you know, but unless you talk about it and you kind of figure out the similarities of what bipolar depression looks like, you wouldn't know, you know. So, so yeah, I mean, generating that conversation will help people not think that, you know, well, maybe I'm just, you know, like overdiagnosing myself or, you know, WebMDing it, so to speak. So.
Okay, so I guess, how do we approach that? Because if I'm thinking, if I'm a kid and I'm not learning about mental health from at home, I see it online a few times, but I don't click on the articles. How are they being exposed to it, so that when they do see that something may be going wrong, that there's an answer for it?
Yeah, I would say, you know, introducing programs into the schools, you know, with like health classes. I mean, you know, they teach about sex education. Why not about mental health education as well? Because if not, people just think it's a normal thing. Oh, he's just going through his teenage years, you know, and I mean, it's going to be over. And then by that time, it might be too late, and it might be too, you know, like far, you know, down the rabbit hole, so to speak.
Yeah.
So starting like at an early age, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of mixed reviews about doing something like that, because I know a lot of parents probably feel like if you talk about it, then they're going to misdiagnose or overdiagnose. But, you know, for me, it's like if you drive conversation and we have similarities, and you can relate to patterns, you know, with somebody else, then, you know, then it's a problem. And if not, you know, that's also good, because then that will give you some relief that, you know, hey, this is normal. I'm not actually dealing with that. So.
And I will say this for anyone who's listening, I went 30 years without knowing what was wrong with me. I had mood swings. I slept 13, 14 hours a night. I didn't want to talk to people, yet I was really popular. So anyone who's listening, like, it's okay. If you don't feel like that's normal, just talk to someone. I was mixed diagnosed. See a good doctor. I saw lots of different doctors, but until I found the right one, that's the one that made the difference, that found out there was something wrong.
Yeah.
So definitely.
I think that's good advice, is, you know, like get a second opinion, get a third opinion, because, you know, sometimes, and I can speak on experience, because before I went back into entertainment, I worked on the medical and pharmaceutical side. You know, those guys, you know, don't kill me, but they're evil. They are, you know, and sometimes doctors will prescribe things just because they're going to, you know, be lobbied and get paid extra. So it is really important also for, if you are not mentally unstable, to not put yourself through those types of medications. I think also we don't talk about it from that side as well, is misdiagnosis can be an issue, and it can cause mental health issues. So.
Yeah. And because I was misdiagnosed, I won't say my life would have been better, but there are so many missed relationships that dropped because of my reactions to things, because of the mental illness. So, and we were kind of talked about this yesterday, but even if you have a good life, if you have a mental illness and you take care of it properly, you know, however you see fit, usually it's through medication and therapy, the grass is so much greener on the other side. And
Right.
people just get comfortable and who they are, and they don't like change, and they don't understand, well, I feel good. Why, what could be better? Personal experience, it gets way better. If you do have mental illness, when you get on the right medicine and therapy is great, it's so much better. So
Right.
anyone who's going through that struggle right now, keep with it. It took me almost a year and a half to get the right medication. But boy, once I got it, oh my gosh, game changer.
Yeah, and and you should call yourself a mental health warrior. I don't use the word survivor because it's kind of like victimizing yourself and it makes you feel helpless. So, using the word like warrior, like I like that because I've seen people using that online, which is a positive thing because it is a daily fight. With any condition, we have to be strong for ourselves as well, not just relying on other support. So the fact that you took that step and you went out there and you fought for it to get back to normalcy. I mean, I think that's very admirable. So.
Well, thank you. I'll take warrior. I love it. I'm here for it. One thing that I struggle with, and I actually just did my first post of mental health and describing my story to an extent. And it was scary. The reason I took so long was because honestly, I don't really like to share my personal stuff on social media to begin with. But two, I kind of felt like, everyone I've ever known is a friend on Facebook, right? So if they see that, then they'll be like, oh, you have an issue, or, oh, that makes sense why you were crazy that day. How do you get past that thinking?
I mean, honestly, I've gotten to the point where I feel like if I care too much about what other people think, it's gonna harm me. So you have to kind of get out of your own way. And I have to be an extrovert for what I do in entertainment, but I'm secretly an introvert. So like you said, most days sometimes I don't want to deal with people. I don't answer text messages. I don't want to look at other people. Like I'm okay with being by myself, and I thought that was normal for extended periods of time, and it's not. But so I had to take that step to start sharing this with, like I said, a close friend, and even having support. We talked yesterday about pets. Like that can help as well with the healing process and coping because you still have some presence there and another being there to help you heal. My company logo is a wolf because I had a pet wolf. Her name was Electra, and I raised her for about 10 years. And I love the nurturing aspect of the wolf pack and how everybody is equal and they share and help each other out with their problems. So I worked with a rescue up in Colorado that deals with veterans and utilizing the wolf rescue as a way to heal like PTSD and trauma and mental health. So before that, my grandmother, she's part Cherokee, and we grew up with her. She had a gray wolf, and I just thought they were just very complex animals, very similar to a person, on their behavioral patterns. They deal with depression and stuff as well, like whenever they deal with death in the family, because my husky passed away and she was grieving for like 6 months. So and then when I lost her, it kind of put me in a downward spiral, and I didn't want to deal with things either, but I had a good friend that had some support for me. So but it is important for you to use anything available. If you can't talk to people, at least have an emotional support animal, I guess you can call it. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend a wolf for everybody because you have to have licensing and training. So I'm not promoting any kind of illegal activities here. I have a license. She's trained for film and TV, but yeah, find a dog, a cat, something that's legal within your reach and that you can take responsibility for. I think if you can't just deal directly with people first, just having another thing there as a support, would be good.
I do want to point out mini horses are considered emotional support animals. So just throwing that out there for anyone.
I've never ridden a horse. I'd like to try, but I'm not originally from Texas. So I swear, like when I first came down to Houston, I thought everybody was going to be in like horses and carriages. My cousin lied to me, so I thought it was going to be like Amish town, so in California.
Not exactly. You mentioned something. Even when you have a good days, sometimes you just get a quick thought in your head that just kind of brings you down a little. What do you do to get yourself out of it? Because I think that's really hard, especially for someone who's just starting their journey with this and finding it out. And a lot of people feel that every day and they just stop because it hurts more. They say that the pain of something happening isn't as tough as the pain of the journey, because on the other side it's so much better, but you have to go through that to get to the good part. So how do you keep that journey?
Well, for me, I use other people that depend on me as a way to motivate me to get up and get out and about. I have clients that I work with very closely that are dealing with the same things, so, my thing is, if I'm not getting up and getting out there and fighting for them, then it's not fair, because they've entrusted me, with the responsibility. So I think that helps me whenever I get into my downward spirals, is to, like I was saying earlier, talk to somebody about it, but then realize that it's not just about you. Because I feel like sometimes we get into, and it's human nature, we get into this whole, like downward spiral of, hey, I'm the victim and it's all about me. And that's why I was saying earlier, I don't like to say the word survivor or victim or patient, like warrior, because it is a fight and you have to want to, get better.
Yep.
And you have to push not just for yourself, but for others.
That's 100% true. That was a very accurate statement. I know when I was going through mine, my doctor was nervous that I wasn't going to pull myself out of it. And then my therapist said one day, she was like, you came in that day and you decided that you wanted to change. You decided that. And then from there on, you grew, and now look at you. And that's a main point. You have to want to be better. You have to want to make that initiative. No one else can do it for you. They can be there and support you, but at the end of the day, you have to make that decision for you, and you have to put in the work. Again, grass is much greener on this side. It's gonna be worth it. It's gonna be hard, but it will be worth it. So I totally agree with that statement. I think the first step is understanding, hey, let's do something about it.
Yeah, and I talk about with like even marketing is the circle of influence. So like who's your circle of influence, and how you react to certain things and how you do things affects others. So if we stop looking at it as a me issue and look at it as something that can affect and can be a domino effect for others around me, then I think that'll help you get out of that mindset of, this is an issue I'm dealing with by myself, no, because it's an issue that you're dealing with your inner circle, because it affects everybody.
Yeah. And I mean, too, I agree with you. When I was going, I had a small group that I was going to, and we talked every day about, and what I was saying earlier is that it was a lot of different people with different issues, but yet we all had it all in common. We had something that we all were bonded together. And, if you can't find a group through Facebook, or you don't feel comfortable with that, NAMI has great support groups. You can reach out to them, and you can go online, and I believe most of them are free. So feel free, don't be, everyone's going through the same thing. So when you go in, everyone's feeling the same thing as you. So don't feel intimidated or nervous. We're all there the same. And I think that's a beautiful thing with mental health, is that, you have that family and that community, and you feel so much stronger for it, especially when you hear, hey, someone else is going through that same thing. And I think that's a beautiful part of mental health.
And I thought about a really good example to kind of piggyback on what you were saying earlier about, those that are kind of a little deterred from going on social media. I've seen a lot of people that are going on anonymously, without pictures of sharing who they are, but still sharing their story and their experience. So there's not a face to it. So they feel that there's still some level of security there, but it's still therapeutic, I think, for them because they're able to have some kind of outlet to share stories and see other people's stories. So, if you're not ready to show who you are yet, you don't have to be an advocate. You don't have to be a face. The first step is just to at least, create an account and join a community. You can be, John Doe or Jane Doe, like it's not about you, it's about the issue and then trying to solve it.
Well, hey, this is the perfect time because everyone's wearing masks. So
yeah.
No one now. You kind of mentioned something the other day too about, especially you work with entertainers and artists. You don't have to share with getting creative and having that outlet. You don't have to share your art. You mentioned yesterday that some of your artists, they may write a poem or a song, but they won't ever sing it because they just need to get it out. They don't want to share it, but they need to get it out. Some people want to, talk about it and some don't, and that's okay. To do it either a personal way.
Yeah, you don't have to turn it into a talent. It can just be a way to like express yourself, and you don't have to be the best, painter. You don't have to be the best singer or the best playwright. But if you do something, it's for yourself. It's therapeutic to let it out. And I think that's where people get confused when we say, using art as a therapy. You don't have to be Picasso. You don't have to be the next Beyonce. You don't have to be the next Jay-Z or the next Tyler Perry. It's just taking steps to put something out on paper. And I think that's when you put it and manifest it, in a physical form, it becomes easier for you to start, unraveling it and resolving it.
And I will say this, because I was told to write things down and keep a journal, and I tried. I did it 2 days and then I was over it. I was like, my hand's tired. I got too much. So I just stopped. But one of my friends actually recommended, she said, you really like, when you work out, you don't like yoga, you like kickboxing and an active thing. So, why don't you just go to like a dance studio and just take like a beginner's class of just like moving and expressing yourself. No one's going to judge you, and you can be free to do what you want. So that's something that I'm actually trying, TBD on how that goes. But I definitely think that you need to find something and
even working out, exercise is very therapeutic too, and it increases serotonin levels. So, that's something to look into as well. I get motivated when I hit the weights and I feel like I de-stress, when I head to the gym. So that's why I'm kind of struggling so bad right now because the gyms are all closed. So I'm trying what I can, we're doing online classes and stuff to keep motivated. But yeah, once the gyms do open, I think that's something if you don't have anything else to do, like your health is a good way, to start, pushing that out, through the metaphysically. So.
I will say this though, when I was in my depressive episode, I couldn't even get out of bed. My friends would call me and so the thought of me working out at that point, it wasn't going to happen. But even, I have a support animal. I have a dog, love of my life. And I had to walk her, right? So she's actually the one that got me out, given I wasn't doing a full workout, but I got outside and I was able to walk around. And that's just another point that, if you are able, having that other being there with you, they get you out as well.
Yeah. And, and even because I'm big on natural stuff, even like holistic remedies, you do a lot of research on that. I'm not, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to sit here and recommend something to somebody, but I do use magnesium salt baths. They have like floating pods where you can go to do like the salt floats and stuff like that. There is actually some research behind it to where it does help to increase, like chemical balances in your body and flush out a lot of, like the negative imbalances. So, looking into that or even doing it at home, it's basically Epsom salt. Like soaking yourself in Epsom salt actually does help, people with off balance chemical hormones. So.
I just thought of something. So when one of your artists or clients does post, or you, for example, when you post online, you know, something about mental health and that kind of thing, what type of reaction do you get?
People are usually surprised because, like and then I feel like because I look like a normal person and, I go through like all the normal day-to-day activities and they see me smiling, I'm always positive about everything. It's kind of a shock, but, I think it helps people to open up more. So, those people that are brave enough to share their story helps others open up. And I think slowly that'll kind of change the stigma of, what, mental health and mental illness is, because, it's different levels. I think a lot of people deal with it. They just don't know what it is or what to call it. So.
What did you say yesterday that was perfect? Mental health is everyone, or how did you put it? Like, it doesn't have a demographic that it's towards, it happens to everyone. It's not just for one specific group, it's everyone has the possibility, I can't remember exactly what you said, but you said it very poetically, much better than what I'm doing right now.
If I did, I probably lost it, but it comes and goes. So maybe that's part of the issue too.
Take a little
but,
bit your coffee and then you'll remember.
Yeah, I know. But no, it is, it affects everybody, so it's something that you can't really put a description to it. And everybody has their own personal experiences. But
Right.
What you were saying earlier is, sharing those experiences, we can see the similarities, and, through the shared experiences, we can help better ourselves.
Yeah. I will say that, with social media and, it has opened a new platform, especially the more and more that it's been talked about on these platforms, I think more and more people have felt more comfortable about sharing. And so I will say that, everyone kind of thinks of social media and it can have a negative connotation sometimes to it. But for that aspect, I think that it's helped mental health and discussion about it. So in that sense, I think it's very positive. It also helps, like we kind of talked about earlier, people just engaging in a conversation. Sometimes you can click on the wrong thing and then somehow you end up in a page that's about mental health, and you're able just to be you.
Right.
And so for that, I think social media has been very helpful for the mental health.
Yeah, and it provides equal representation for everybody as well, because, whether you're a real estate agent, a music artist, a bus driver, like whoever, whatever career that you're in, like it affects everybody the same way. And it's okay for us to be able to start that conversation, to share it, because I think some people feel like depends on what they do that they have to, keep it a secret, or it's nothing to be ashamed about. So, having social media as an advocate, having these campaigns, it really does help with, kind of changing that face.
Have you ever experienced at work, an employee or employer having backlash for having a mental illness?
I'm looking back when I was in corporate, I would probably say, there probably has been some occurrences, when somebody just had like a breakdown and they just, they got let go, but there's not any kind of training for people to identify these things. So it's going to be an uphill battle for now, I think, because it's hard because without the training materials, it's hard to tell, is this something that is a, health issue and a health concern, or is it just, them being them? So, as I think that's another thing that we probably need to put more time and effort into introducing that to the workplace as well, because, who knows how many people have just dealt with like one episode and were judged for that. So.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've just like snapped at people and then they're like, oh, don't talk to Mandy, she snaps at you, so I definitely think that there's something to be said about, just jumping in with the sexual harassment training, just do it all at once. I definitely think that that's something to be said for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I figured out what you said. Mental health does not discriminate. That's what you said. Very good. I loved it.
Well, I appreciate that. I was able to give an inspirational quote that I forgot because I probably didn't have enough coffee. So,
Got your
but
back.
no,
Don't
you're
worry.
right though. It doesn't discriminate. Whether you're black, blue, yellow. Like female, male. Other. It's just it affects everybody, and I think that's where we can connect on that note. So.
Um, just kind of one last wrap up. We didn't really talk about like genetics. How do you think that, I guess, that conversation can be had? When I was kind of going through my misdiagnosis, and then when I just found out, my mom just came out and said, "Oh yeah, I was on a mood stabilizer," and I was like, "Really? You couldn't tell me this from like 10 years ago?" So how do you go about, I guess, maybe having that conversation, or just knowing that may be a possibility, and maybe what should parents do, if they
Yeah.
know that.
I mean, I think, as responsible parents, I don't have any kids, but I have four brothers that have three kids each, and I, play uncle dad every once in a while. So just letting them know ahead of time, it's nothing to shelter the kids from, that, hey, like I dealt with this, if you're feeling something similar, like we can talk about it and we can work out a plan, to manage it before it gets out of hand. But yeah, I mean, I think like it is hereditary and it can be passed down, like other illnesses and other pre-existing conditions. So having that conversation with your kids early, and then if you're having issues, taking that first step to talk to your parents about it. And if they choose to share, they share. If they don't, honestly, like with our generation, and speak to our parents, that it's not always an option. But I think it will get better, as we progress and things are being shared more later down the line when our kids and their kids have kids. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I do want to mention that if any kid is in that situation, NAMI again is always there, but you can also, your school counselor, it's what they get paid the big bucks for. So, don't be afraid to have that conversation. Just because you feel like you have nowhere to go, you do have options. So definitely don't give up because of that reason. Okay, is there anything else about, social media and the current climate, and where do you see it going?
I think it's going to get better if we continue to cultivate platforms. I sound like probably Gary Vee's clone, but TikTok. If we really cultivate platforms like that provide authenticity without any filters, without any gloss, where people can be real and share their stories. I mean, there's good and bad and ugly about those platforms, but I'm feeling like it's that platform itself is moving towards more of a positive aspect. I don't see a lot of trolling and a lot of negative, at least when it comes to like with mental health and destigmatizing things on there, and people are very positive and supportive. So cultivating those communities to grow is very important to the next generation, and and helping us also understand about the real face.
And I will say this: I have had people, say negative things, but the way that I look at it is they're just not educated on mental health. So I usually just send them a link to what it's like, to help educate them, so that they know, hey, you're not just having a bad day.
Right.
This is actually a thing.
And then also, not to cut you off, but before I forget, because my mind, it's important to know that sometimes you might not be able to change somebody's perspective on it, and it's perfectly okay. You don't have to apologize for it, and just, like as long as you take care of yourself and that inner circle that I was, mentioning earlier, that's okay.
Yep.
And for me, like what I want people to know is, it is tough even for me now to talk about the issues that I deal with, because everybody looks to me as kind of like the rock, to be there to stabilize everything. But I don't have to choose one or the other. I can still be a support structure for people and still deal with the issues myself.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, I totally agree with that. Okay. Well, thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, not a problem. But thank you for sharing your story yesterday as well. So I do appreciate that. I mean, I think it takes a lot of courage, and you know, privacy is still for me, you know, it's still valuable because I don't get much of it. So whenever somebody does share something with me, you know, I really do appreciate and respect that.
Well, listen, anytime you need to take a nap, I'll be more than happy to tell it to you again. But no, I appreciate you listening because, you know, kind of like what you said, it does help when you're able to talk about it, your experience. So again, just that dialogue, it's very helpful on both accounts.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank both of you guys for being here with me today and for sharing your stories and for that amazing dialogue. I've been kind of commenting in the chat box for people, you know, as they go back and take a look about resources and just other little things. So I will take a couple minutes, if you guys don't mind, to talk about NAMI Greater Houston and some of the programs and services that we have available, and also our awesome NAMI Walks, which is coming up on May 30th. So NAMI Greater Houston is a mental health advocacy, support, and education organization. So all of our educational programs and support groups are free to the consumers. And we have those in a variety of places within the community, meaning we have support groups for people who live with mental illness. We have support groups for family members and caregivers of those who are living with mental illness. We have a support group called our, actually, sorry, that's an educational program, but we have a brand new veterans support group that's specifically for people with mental illnesses related to their service. So of course has a lot of PTSD in the veterans community and other mental illnesses that often go untreated or undiagnosed for a long period of time. So and that was one of the things I was commenting on as you guys were talking is, NAMI does strive to be that support system for people in the community. So we try to fit as many needs as possible because it's a big need. There's so many people with lived mental illnesses, and it touches so many people. 1 in 5 people live with mental illnesses. So if you're in a group of 5 people, you look around, it's kind of like there's somebody in this room that's living with mental illness, and you can bet that if there's somebody in that room living with mental illness, then the other 4 of you are affected by it in some way. So NAMI Greater Houston, part of the education programs we offer are for people who live with mental illnesses on how to navigate their illness, how to get treatment, what resources are available. Same thing for the caregivers. But these classes are tailored to their situation. We also have classes for veterans, and we also have classes in the educational system. So we have classes that help with parents and teachers, classes that help students deal with their issues and communicate with the support system around them. So there are lots and lots of information available. We have faith-based programs, we have jail diversion programs. In fact, we actually do have programs, training sessions and speaking engagements in the corporate environment to help management identify and deal with mental health issues within their staff and their immediate community. So there is stuff out there. There's a wealth of information out there between NAMI and other like-minded organizations that are there to help people with mental health, help people through this, especially now during the pandemic and the crisis that we're currently in. So NAMI has a resource center where people call in or they're referred to us by other organizations. And we help people find counseling, we help people find housing, we help people with legal issues, or rather get to the people who can help. So we're an awesome resource center, and that resource center has been expanded in this COVID crisis because the need has gone up. I've read articles that the second wave of this pandemic isn't going to be from the virus itself, it's going to be from the mental health impact that we're dealing with, from people being indoors for so long, from people watching their loved ones die, from loss of employment, basically we're all going through a shared trauma, and we're going to have to get the support that we need to make it through this to the next thing. So I did put the link to our website in the chat box. It's www.namigreaterhouston.org. Definitely check out the resources that we have available, the support groups, the educational classes, which in the current environment are all now being offered virtually. So they're extremely accessible. And also, I want to talk to everybody about our NAMI Walks Greater Houston. So NAMI Walks is an annual community event that is our biggest fundraiser, but also our biggest, as our executive director likes to call it, friendsraiser, because it's a community event designed to bring people together. It's a way to melt away all that stigma. It's a place where everybody can come together. You know, like you guys were talking about how mental health doesn't discriminate. So all these people who are living with this mental illness can come together without judgment, without fear, retribution, and just be themselves and enjoy each other as a community, celebrate each other, remember those who we've lost, and just kind of be that support system for each other as a community. So unfortunately, because of the COVID-19 situation, we did have to cancel our in-person event, but we have taken it virtual. So there will still be a NAMI Walks event, and we've actually tried to make it bigger and better. We've come together with other NAMI affiliates across the country for what we're calling a National Day of Hope on May 30th. So I'm gonna put the website in for everybody to check it out, but I'd love it if you guys would join us, build a team, help fundraise, but most importantly, just know that you guys are not alone. Those of you who are living with this or who are affected by this in any other way. There's a community of people out there who are going through what you guys are going through, and there is support and there is help. Like Mandy said, the grass is greener on the other side. There's help on the other side of this, and it does get better. So talks.org/Greater Houston. So if you guys have any questions, I am always available. You can send a contact us to the website, either the Walk website or our NAMI Greater Houston website, and we will get it and reach out to you and respond to you as soon as possible. All right, did you guys have any questions from me about NAMI, about our walk, about anything else we have going on?
No, not at all.
Awesome. All right, well, I will let you both go. And again, thank you so much for your time and your contributions. I cannot wait to post this on the website so everybody can see what they missed. And we will talk to you both soon. Hopefully see you at the walk.
All right. Okay. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, guys.